Now we come of the legal heart of the instruments of the toolkit of the General Assembly, which are the rules of procedure. And here is first of all the composition of the General Assembly. So Stefan Kosoraba already told you which are the different groups of participants, and one main distinction between them are the rights they have. So there are people who have voting rights. Voting rights means that you are able to vote on the different motions and proposals. People who have the right to speak in plenary and in the general, also in the working groups, and the right to make motions to the plenary. The quorum, that's quite easy. We need half of the possible delegates of the General Assembly. At the moment, we have 96 member churches. Of these 96 member churches, there are 60 member churches which one delegate, and the other 36 member churches have two delegates, which means altogether this makes 132 delegates from the member churches, and the council appointed 6 more delegates from their pool of delegates, which means we have a possible number of delegates of 138, and we need 69 delegates to fulfill the quorum. And the plenary sessions and the worships of the General Assembly, they are public, not the working groups. We had to experience that in former times when we had too many people that are not delegates in the working groups, that they were able also to advocate or also to lobby for their own work. And it's more important that the delegates of the member churches have the possibility also to find their own positions. Now, and the public can be excluded, and especially if it comes in the election process to a situation when we have the discussion on respective candidates, then all candidates and all those who have not the right to vote have not the right to move motions have to leave the room. So just to see what it means to have all these different groups of participants. So we have the delegates with the right to speak, the right to make motions, and the right to vote. This time 112 delegates from the member churches already registered. So that means, and then delegates of participating churches who have not the right to vote, but the right to make motions and to speak, and appointed delegates. So we have already 85% of representation of our member churches registered at the moment. Then we have the members of the current council. These are 10 people who attend the General Assembly not as delegates of their churches, and the other 3 are delegates of their churches. So the other group are the experts, advisors, partners, observers, called advisors. So the difference is that the experts and advisors and partners, they are advisors to the General Assembly, to the CPCE at all, as a whole, and the observers mostly are represented advisors to their church delegations, or coming from other organizations which are partners but not formalized partners, the guests, employee, and the staff. Altogether, at the moment, we have 231 registered participants for the next General Assembly, just to have an idea of the numbers. Now it comes to voting procedure. So we are doing it in the old-fashioned style, still carried out by a show of hands. There will be ballot cards, so we don't need the technical equipment and devices for the voting. All delegates with the right to vote are sitting in the nave of the church, and so it's mostly very easy for the moderation to see all of them. And so that's the easier way instead of waiting for all the technical problems, and that's the way we do it. Voting can be done also held by secret ballot upon request. Also, that's also the question whether it's a secret ballot or secret voting or secret ballot. So it can be applied to the elections as well as to motions. And since we live with different legal traditions and cultures, we decided to formulate the whole rules of procedure very easy, in an easy language. Firstly, they were formulated in German, but also in German we have already 3 different legal traditions and cultures between German, the Swiss German, and the Austrian German, and therefore we tried always to avoid legal terminology and instead to describe it in a way that all people who are not native speakers are able to understand it. In this way, the adoption of the resolution is very easy if there are more votes in favor than against, more yes than no. If it's on the same level, the yes and no votes, then the resolution did not pass. And all abstentions and invalid votes are not counted because they are not in favor and they are not against. They are not a yes or a clear no. So that's a very easy way to describe it. And there are just some different exclusions where you have another kind of approval, which means you need an approval of 2/3 of the members present and entitled to vote. And that's when it comes to the amendment of the statute, when it comes to the amendment of the rules of procedure, or the amendment of the study texts. So these 3 versions, there you need 2/3, but in the other cases, it's just that you need more votes, yes, than no. Quite easy. And the motions, that was not as easy as the last General Assemblies because it also changed during the last years that we have now the possibility to move motions also by online, by sending an email. In earlier times, it was only done in the plenary sessions. And therefore, we had to find better criteria and to also explain better how all the rules and the procedures of motions take place. So we have motions in the plenary. The motions in the plenary go to the moderation. And that means it has to be in a written form. A written form does not mean that it has to be sent or handed in writing, but that it has to be in a written form before people vote on it, so that it has to be on the screen, that everyone is able to read the motion before people will vote on it. That's important also for the translation and interpretation of this document, of the motions. And every motion in the plenary needs 4 supports by other people with the right to move a motion. In the election procedure, there's a special case where you don't need to move the motion or to submit the motion in written form, because there's only one possibility for a motion. That means that you like to change the electoral list, and that is oral, but also with 4 supports. And if you have a motion on the rules of procedure, so that means that for points of order, then just take both hands, and there you need no support. It's oral. outside of the plenary, these motions go to the Motions and Resolutions Committee. That's something new. I will describe it later. And they have to be also in written form and need 4 supports. And a special thing is if it comes to requests for amendments of a study text, all the study texts had already a long procedure where the churches had the possibility to react on the study text, have the possibility to send people to the drafting committees, to send people to the consultation processes. Then it was twice discussed in the council meeting, and therefore there has to be a very high hindrance to change or amend these texts. So it's only possible if there is a request for an amendment by the working group that's dealing with this text, or if you have 10 supports to your request. And then it has to pass also 2/3 of the voting members. So that's really a high hindrance here. So then sometimes it happens also that you have counter motions. All of them who are moderating, they know what happens with counter motions. They have to be also made in writing, and they are voted on before the original motion. Normally, they're more far-reaching than the others. And it's clear that the most far-reaching motion is voted on first. And the moderator decides which motion is the most far-reaching motion. And if it's unclear, the General Assembly determines the order of the motions. That was very, how can I say, it's not really practical to, so therefore I have an example for you. So for an example that's just taken out of not current discussions, for instance, there is a proposal for a new study process says, we need a new study process on veganism. That's the proposal by the council. That could be a proposal by the council. And then there's a supplementary proposal, a counter proposal says, yeah, but please, the study process has to be on veganism and climate change. And then there are others that say, okay, we have also a supplementary proposal that means it has to be on veganism, climate change, and rural areas. And now if the moderator has to look how to pass the votes, and it's, or how to deal with the votes, then it's clear this proposal 2 is the most far-reaching of those. So he has to start first to let the plenary vote on this proposal 2. And then if it didn't pass on proposal 1, and then on proposal 1. But then it can happen that someone else comes and says, no, I understand it differently. I understood veganism, that this whole study process will deal with veganism as a religion. So now the moderation has to ask, oh, was this the real intention of the first proposal or not? And if it's not, was not the real intention of the first proposal, then it's clear that this counter proposal 1 is the most far-reaching motion. And then this will be the first that will be voted on. This will be the second, the third, the fourth, just to understand in one example how it works. I told you we have the points of order. So some examples for points of order. So there is in particular to postpone the discussion. If this motion is approved, this means the agenda item will be taken up later in the General Assembly. So for whatever reason. So the second will be to limit speaking time. In the last rules of procedure, it was possible to limit it not to more than 3 minutes for each speaker in a debate. Now it's not possible to limit it to no more than 1 minute, because we realized that also it's possible to speak already a lot in 1 or 2 minutes. The third will be to determine the number of speakers and how often they make the floor speak, make the floor, how often they speak on a topic. And then that's to close the list of speakers for a topic. That means those still on the list who have not yet spoken may still speak. And the difference is to end the present debate. That means if this motion is approved, the debate shall end immediately and the current agenda item shall be brought to a vote. And those who are still on a list of speakers have not anymore the possibility to speak. Then there's the possibility to interrupt the meeting. For instance, if you need to have advice from your legal advisor or something like this, or you need to first discuss it in your region or with your other member churches from the same denomination. And it's also the point of order to hold a secret ballot or a secret vote. I'm still on this level of the rules of procedure, but we're coming up to the close. So the committees. At the last General Assembly, we had two committees, the Nominations Committee and the Drafting Committee. The Nominations Committee, that is the committee that tries to figure out the best way how to prepare a list of the council and the respective proxy council members. That's the Nominations Committee. Their work will be done on Friday of the General Assembly when the vote for the elections of the council are finished. And then there's the Drafting Committee. The Drafting Committee is responsible for the final report of the General Assembly. And in earlier times, the Drafting Committee had also to deal with all the motions that came up in between the plenary sessions, and also to deal with the statements that were passed by the General Assembly and so on. Therefore, now the council decided to split the workload of this drafting committee. So the drafting committee is mainly responsible for the editorial parts of the final report. So how was the worships? What was main issues of the keynote and so on. And then we have a Motions and Resolutions Committee. The Motions and Resolutions Committee, they will deal with all the motions that come in during the General Assembly. They will also look whether they can arrange motions together as one motion. Will ask those who submitted the motion whether they understand it correctly and whether they can also bring motions together as one motion or whether they should split it. So that's their task. And it will consist of 5 to 8 members and thereof 3 council members. The steering of the General Assembly is one of the main tasks of the council during the General Assembly, and therefore the council members take also responsibility for this committee. And then we have statement committees. That's also something new, that for statements that were issued by the General Assembly, we have respective committees, and the statements will already be pre-prepared so that people don't have to work on from scratch, but they are the ones who are responsible for the editorial work and the redrafts during the General Assembly. And the council decided or proposed to have 3 statements, short statements during the General Assembly. You remember maybe the last General Assembly issued a very huge statement on the end of World War I. This time it will be short statements, and that one will be on minorities and one on migration. Those are the proposal from the hosting churches. And then one on interreligious dialogue. I will come to it later. And now it was also the proposal of one working process to have one on democracy, but short statements. And then when we had started with the code of conduct, it was clear we need also a body that is monitoring complaints, and therefore there's a complaints committee consisting of 4 to 6 members, of which there are 2 ombuds people, male and female, a member of the pastoral care team. That's also something new for people to assist people who who moved a complaint or against whom a complaint is also submitted. Then there's a legal specialist coming from Romania, knowing the legal framework in Romania. And of all these people, there could be one council, has to be one council member. The council will propose the people for these committees. You already have the possibility also to say in which committees you like to enter with the second registration. And the proposals of the council will have always one person at least less than it's possible. In this way, if the General Assembly during the opening plenary decides or asks someone else also to enter into one of these groups, then no one else has to be substituted or to we don't need to put someone out of the list. That's the idea. And I'm sorry we have come close to 4, but now it's the elections of the council. I think it's important also to understand how this works. First, the council of the CPCE, it consists of 13 members and 13 personally assigned deputy members, the so-called proxies. And the council is responsible for CPCE work between the General Assemblies. 6 years, normally, the period of the term of office. The council constitutes itself during the General Assembly and elects a 3-member presidium from among its members. And when it comes now to the election, all the member churches have still time to nominate council members until 15th of May of this year. So they still have someday more than 1 month. And when all the member churches then nominated their candidates, then we will ask the candidates to give all their information, which we put then in a presentation of all candidates. So all the delegates will get a short overview with presentations of all candidates before the General Assembly, so that you're able already to look through all the names, what are their special interests, their experiences, their expertise and skills. And we tried to now present it so that it's the more easy to understand, because it's not easy at all how elections work in ecumenical organizations. And so it's clear this nomination committee will work out a list of 13 council members and 13 respective proxy council members with regard to denomination, region, also question of gender balance and so on. And we'll present this list on Wednesday evening in the business plenary. And when there are no change requests from the plenary, on Thursday, there can be the election of this list. Yeah. According to our rules of procedure and the experience of last General Assembly, it's clear that between the first presentation of a list and the election, there need to be 1 night that people can reflect on it. If there are change requests in the plenary, then the nominations committee can withdraw the list. Or there can be the official motion for a request for amendment of the list, done by 5 supports. And if this happens, this case B, then the delegates or all those who have the right to move motions have the possibility to submit their change requests within 6 hours after the representation to the nominations committee, so that they have the possibility in the next morning to rework the electoral list. So then on Thursday, in this case, will be the second list presentation. Again, if there are no change requests, then on Friday, there will be the election of list 2. Again, 1 day in between. If there are requests, the same nominations committee can withdraw or people can request. And again, there is the possibility to ask for a amended list, and then in 6 hours people can also put in their change requests. And on Friday, in this case, will be a presentation of list 3. And after the presentation of list 3, there has to be an election. And so if all people are happy with list 3, they can directly elect list 3. If someone with 5 supporters asks to, then it's possible to choose between lists 1 to 3. So then in this case, you have to decide whether you like to vote for list 1, or list 2, or for list 3, and this list that has the majority will be elected. That's the way how we figured out that people can make changes, and on the other side, it's still possible that we find mostly the majority and anonymity of the plenary. And after the election of the council meets in Sibiu and elects the 3 members presidium from among its members. The outgoing council remains in office until the end of the General Assembly, and in the closing service, the old council is bid farewell and the incoming council is introduced. Last, the working groups. So we have 3 phases of working groups. Stefan already told, working groups on texts, working groups on topics, and on the future workshops and new topics. And the composition is confirmed by the plenary session at a proposal of the council. You all have the possibility now to decide during the second registration survey for respective working groups. And in this opening plenary, you have the possibility to change if you think, okay, something happened and you're in the wrong working group, then it's the last possibility to change in this opening plenary, just if it happened that you're not in the right group. And each group elects on the proposal of the council a convener and group secretary. And the rules of procedure, it's also part of the code of conduct is also part of the rules of procedure.